Hi, this is JP Newman on Investing on Purpose, and today is my first solo episode. After 20 episodes, which is now season one, is in the can, I am doing my first episode alone. And I wanted to share with you, it's been great. The first 20 episodes and kind of what I've seen and what I've learned has been great. And the really fun thing is I'm starting to get feedback from you, the audience, about what you like and kind of what you're hearing. And it was interesting because there's kind of a commonality, I think, for all of us, which was the purpose of the show is how do we lean more into our purpose, our things that really matter so that we can make an outsized return so that basically your job, your company becomes something more of a joy, has more life satisfaction in it. And again, we all want the returns. The returns are great, but it becomes a byproduct of that joy and that sustainability. And so it's been interesting as I've gotten phone calls because I think a lot of people keep asking me this common question, which is, okay, I hear your episode. How do I do this? How do I apply this to me? How do I actually figure out a way to create more creativity, not just to hear the story, but to make sure that I can do it too? And it made me realize yesterday of a story, and I'm going to tell you a story of how I did it through my journey. And it came up yesterday when my 16-year-old son, Zach, started asking me the same question. Then I kind of realized where it all comes from and where it all starts. And hopefully through my journey and my story that I'm going to tell you today, because I was pretty locked in. I was pretty traditional. I wouldn't call myself a creative. But it was told for a long time, I was going to be a lawyer. That was kind of like my child. Everyone said he's going to be a great lawyer. And to break out of that and to really break out of that shell of how society sees you, the pressure of society and all those things and going beyond that. And then ultimately, not only getting beyond just kind of like what you're supposed to be, how people see you, what society says, but how you actually get to the other side of that and really lean into your creativity. We're going to talk about the Starbucks exercise today. So hold on and you'll hear about the Starbucks exercise, which is the first really good thing I really suggest that everyone does to start opening up that creativity, which will ultimately bring you, I think, to what you're looking for, which is, again, a lot of fun, great returns, and passion and joy and meaning in life. So just to start, yesterday I was with my son, and he said, Dad, gosh, he's a junior. He's already feeling the pressure of like college applications. He's like, Dad, oh my God, everyone out there, they're already taking these tests and all these colleges want super high scores and amazing grades. And he goes, I just feel the pressure. And he says, Dad, I'm really embarrassed. And I said, well, why are you embarrassed? He's like, because my friends already know what they want to do. Now, remind you, these are 16-year-olds. They already know what they want to do. They're already studying hard for their scores. And I don't know what I want to do. I have no idea, and I'm embarrassed by it. And that was the moment that I'm like, aha. It starts earlier than I thought, this pressure that we have to be somebody, to really be, be successful, be someone. And it probably even starts before then. And it really made, from when he told me, it really got me to my story. Because I remember being that age, having that same pressure, and really isn't that, again, where this all comes from. And so my advice to him was, I know your friends think at 16 that they know what they want to do, and they're already going to get great, they're going to try to outperform you, and you're feeling the competition. But really, it's so important that you stay true to yourself. And in that uncomfortableness of not knowing exactly what that all means. Like, what is my mission? What really is important to me? Really, what is the meaning? That these are such hard, large, esoteric questions. How am I ever even going to get to them? And my answer to my son was one day at a time. And you're supposed to not know for a long time. Not everyone grows up like a Tiger Woods who was, born with a golf club in his hand, or some people just know. But I think for the rest of us, we generally don't know. And I don't know that there's always this God-given, ordained thing. I don't think I was God ordained to be in commercial real estate and kind of my path and starting a nonprofit and starting a private equity firm. I don't think that was like a story, but I do think that what I might have done differently than a lot of people is having the patience, the courage, and the humility to ask the questions, and failures, by the way, to ask the questions that got me to a place that ultimately got me to a place of purpose, passion, and again, great returns, which was actually always a goal of mine too. But the returns actually become a byproduct. But before I go too far, so growing up as a Jewish kid in Los Angeles, there's the expression, he's going to be a nice Jewish lawyer. Well, the funny thing was, that's kind of what was put in my head. You're going to be a lawyer because you'll do well and what have you. And it sounded good to me. I think when you're 7 years old, that's a perfectly rational idea. I'm just going to be a lawyer. And I wound up going to UCLA. My dad went to UCLA, so perfectly rational that I'd go to UCLA. And that seemed like, going to be a lawyer. And my dad went to UCLA. Those are the two pieces I had threaded together by 16 years old. And then I realized, as I was going through my journey and having my own little bit of a spiritual awakening, which Tristan, part of that we talked about with the episode with Tristan, but really this idea that there's got to be more to life than just, what meets the eye in the three dimensions. And I think as I started waking up to that, I was pre-law at UCLA, and I was studying for my LSATs. The LSATs, for those of you who don't know, are the test you would take to go to law school. So I started looking at law schools, went to the East Coast, started preparing for the test, and I started reading the books. And I'm like, I didn't want to admit it, but I was totally bored, completely bored. And I didn't want to be bored because it was really inconvenient to be bored. It would have been much better if I just would have really liked it, because then I could have stuck to the narrative that was given to me from childhood, and then I could have impressed. I had a quick answer. So friends or people would say, what do you want to do when you grow up? Or what do you want to do after college? I had a really clean answer. I'm going to go to law school and, graduate, a great college, and that would have just been much more easier than what I saw the pain on my son's face yesterday, which is, Dad, I have no idea and I'm embarrassed. And when I finally realized that it was so painful because it was so not what I was supposed to do, it was so not my path, and finally admitting to myself that was not my path, and having to basically tell the universe, which is your friends, your family, I'm not going to law school. You know why? I don't feel it. I just don't feel it. And the hard part about that was I had no backup. It wasn't like I had a good story. And for a storyteller like me to not have a good story is not a great thing. So I'm not going to law school, and I'm not sure what I want to do. And that's really what it was like for many years, by the way, too. So it wasn't like that was just I was valet parking cars for a while. I worked at a call center, which was like a boiler room. I had a lot of shitty jobs, had a lot of temp jobs. I tried to get into real estate a couple times earlier, actually, and I got one job. It paid me nothing, but it was good. It got me started. But actually, I was on a construction site. I was on a tractor at 6:30 in the morning in 115-degree heat. So, and I really appreciated looking back at my boss at the time said, "College boy, you can't talk about real estate if you don't know how to build it, if you don't know how to build the properties." So I actually, for a year, was an assistant superintendent doing that. And the whole time it was uncomfortable because I wasn't making money and the story didn't look good. I'd go to parties, I'd talk to my friends. My friends were the friends that were already in that modality of they had better stories than me. They would get married in their 20s, which no judgment, take good corporate jobs, and their story was better than mine because my story was still kind of between jobs. Like a JP's kind of floating around doing his thing. And it was really uncomfortable. But what was interesting during the process was the more I leaned into my truth of actually starting to feel things like say, this, when I hear about this opportunity, does it give me more energy and excitement or less energy and excitement? And so I think I started to learn the skill of, I already looked bad at that point. I mean, my story sucked. So once your story sucks and you can kind of get through some of the humility that like, I'm not on top right now, and actually trust the process, then you start to lean a little more into, does this give me energy? How intrigued am I really by this opportunity? And you start to check in, and it's hard at first because I know for me and a lot of the people that I speak to, we live a lot of our time in our heads. We don't feel things in our body as much, and it's hard to feel things in your body. I spent a lot of my 20s feeling kind of numb. Great processor up here. Still to this day, I love the fact that I've got a processor that likes to jump. It's a little Ferrari, but the Ferrari processor without the bodily kind of instincts is kind of really one-dimensional. And so I started learning lessons, even like of just leaning in. And to be honest, I wasn't great at it. It's taken me a long, long time, and most of my 20s to really kind of have the courage and the skills to learn to like listen to that intuition. Like, and sometimes it was just as simple as, I don't know that I'm a feeling guy, but let me just close my eyes for 30 seconds and just touch my body, touch my stomach, touch my chest, and ask a question and see if there's any answer. And sometimes the answers were really dim. It wasn't like it was, some people, that's gotten better for me through the years, but it wasn't like, hell yes or hell no. It's like, I don't know. That doesn't feels pretty mediocre. But that was my first clue. And it was really kind of a skill set that I had to develop. And I've just noticed, and I hope this is the short story I want to share with you guys, is one of the joys of doing investing on purpose. And one of the hopes for this was to hope to really, I always say, inspire and educate the next generation of entrepreneurs. But on the education side, it's not just educating the hows of the 5 steps you need to do. And I'm going to continue doing that. I'm going to help you guys with frameworks, and hopefully my guest and my conversations with Ryan will help you with those kind of hows. But the other education is, how do you actually lean in and listen and have more of a guiding principle, especially when it's not comfortable, convenient, and it doesn't always look good. It could be really sloppy, and often it is. And so the nice thing is, I really appreciate it. A lot of you have been reaching out to me with questions, mentorship questions and what have you. And it usually starts in the same place where I'll do a lot more listening at first than speaking. And I like to hear people's narrative at first of where they're at. I had a call this week with someone who's also ironically in a law firm. And I let them kind of tell their story, because the thing is, we all have our stories that we tell. And by listening to the story, I can kind of tell where someone's coming from, how much work they've done are they coming from their head? This is the story they keep telling. And it's ironic that most of us tell the same story. We go to a party, we meet someone new, a job interview. We kind of have our stories, and we stick to them. But how often do we diverge from the story that we're telling? And usually we'll tell the story that makes whatever situation look as good as possible. So between my 19 jobs, valet parking cars in Hollywood and doing all this crazy stuff, I always try to sound as good as possible. But once you're done with your story, some people have had some inquiry into that idea of what am I really here to do? What is really my purpose? What is my legacy? A lot of these things that a lot of these episodes are covering. You've heard it from Tristan, if you've heard that episode. Actually, if you listen to all the episodes, you're going to kind of hear this common theme. It's usually a story that somebody had a negative impact in their life. They got into a car accident. They were an immigrant across the border, or in Tom Bacon's case, he was an architect that had to make a living. Like, we all have stories of either hardship or realization or something that kind of made us look deeper into that purpose. And what I would tell you, and what I've told on my first phone call, almost exclusively, is a great place to start, and it gives you a lot of freedom, is I call it the Starbucks exercise. So the Starbucks exercise is literally, once I hear someone's story, I'm like, thank you for sharing, that's awesome. Would you be willing to do this little 1-hour exercise before our next phone call together? And the Starbucks exercise is literally, go to a coffee house, take a journal with you, and don't pre-think what you're going to think, because you already have your story. Let's end the story for a little bit. And I want you to start with a sentence. If I could have a life completely on my terms over the next 3 to 5 years, what would it look like? And I want you to be as audacious as possible. So make stuff up that is beyond rational, beyond reason, makes no sense, and just go for it. And start writing. And when you're uncomfortable and you have resistance, like let's say your first, it's going to feel uncomfortable, because we're not taught to think. Mickey talks about this in our episode, this idea of leaning into your creativity. This is a great way to start hacking your creativity and get more to your purpose. So literally it might be like, I think I want to work. But what's going to happen is, if you actually continue through this exercise and you don't edit it, right? And I always suggest, if you can, use a pen and not a computer. You can use a computer, but I think the pen is great because it's hand to brain. And what's going to happen if you actually just go for it? You'll start a little conservative, but you're going to start to see that one thought that unleashes you a little bit more will lead to the next thought that unleashes you a little bit more. So, for example, I remember with Tristan, my dream, because how do I go from being a boring private equity guy to a really juicy, fun, purpose private equity real estate firm? And I remember thinking, well, my office needs to not have neon lights. So it's what I didn't want, which is where a lot of us start from what we don't want. So then it went from what we don't want to what I do want. And he'd say, well, what do you want? If you don't want neon lights, what do you want? Well, I want trees. I want to have wood floors. And you just kind of go on and on and on with purpose. And you're going to see that if you allow yourself to start talking about what you do want, step by step, you might say, and I'd ask questions like, what do I do when I wake up in the morning? What's my house like? What's my relationship like? Who am I talking to? Am I on the phone? Or am I writing an email? Or am I on stage? And what does it feel like? And the more and more you start to ask yourself those questions, you're going to get a picture and an idea, call it an inspiration, to be inspired, of really what lights you up. And the more clues that you get of what lights you up, you're going to start to get clues, because the next time you have a job offer or you hear someone else talking about what they're doing, or you're looking into your own business plan for your own company, you're going to start to get these cues, internal cues, and they're going to get stronger and stronger as you continue to do these exercises of what lights you up and not. And that becomes really what I think that becomes your North Star, your compass. And I know for me, that compass just continues to grow to this day, stronger and stronger as I lean into cues. And then from there, it even gets more juicy, because the clearer you are with those cues, it's amazing how quickly you will manifest the partners that you need, the clients that you've been looking for, the one thing that's been missing from your company, the problems that you think are problems. When you are now clued in and you're using all your capabilities, it's amazing how quickly I can problem solve just about everything. As an example, currently at my company, Thrive, I had this sense, and I think it's a lot of CEOs are going through this right now, post-COVID, with this remote working. It's a weird time, and I've talked to a lot of CEOs, and I realize that I even feel for Thrive in some ways right now. We're more rudderless. We're a little even away. We've strayed away from mission, because I think after the pandemic, there's just we're a little flat right now. And it's really been uncomfortable for me to be flat, because for someone who's used to manifesting and so mission-oriented, I know we're off base right now. And it's been uncomfortable, and it's been living in my body. And I've quietly been waiting for the solution, and it hasn't been coming. So I keep looking and looking and looking. But I've now have this discipline of like, okay, I'm uncomfortable. I get to live in that uncomfortableness for a while, because I know people are giving me advice, but I know I haven't come to the answer yet. And just yesterday, it hit me. My aha hit me yesterday as I was talking to someone who I've been mentoring, that what I'm missing is someone of his skill set. And it's actually, I'd call it it's someone like a chief strategic officer, someone who could take my vision and help execute it. Because right now there's a lot of vision, but the rudderlessness is that between vision and a team, there has to be someone who can take the vision. So it's like a left brain, right brain person, and actually execute it. And that just came to me yesterday. But again, it's really the same process now that I've been learning. And I've also just learned to kind of sit with it sometimes, even when it's uncomfortable. Sometimes I talk to a lot of people, and sometimes you get the answer and sometimes you don't. But that's my own process. And so I would hope for you, again, maybe you guys are much further with this. For those of you who are just kind of starting out and thinking about this, or feeling like you've got a business problem, I love to start with the Starbucks exercise. And then from there, I think talking about it with a trusted friend, what you found from that exercise, because the power of writing it down and giving your soul, your brain, an opportunity to let loose a little bit. And then you're going to see the power of actually sharing that out of your lips with someone. It even makes it more audacious, because now you're telling the universe that this is something that you actually really want. And the more it's really grounded in what you really want, really, really want, you're going to see what happens. You're going to also see coincidences will start happening. And I really think that, people say you're such an incredible manifester. It's a skill that's been learned over time. And what I'm hopefully sharing with you guys today is the blueprint to start to manifest. And I think some people think it's like you're just born as a great manifester. I disagree. I think it's a God-given skill that most people don't learn and they don't teach. So hopefully it's a great way to start. I can continue on this of what I would do next, but I think I'm just going to tease you with those first two steps. For those who are interested and want to know what the next thing to do is, if you're kind of past that and you already kind of have a great thing going, but you're still stuck, feel free to reach out to me, because there's many tools in the tool belt on how you kind of continue down that path. So to summarize what started as a conversation with my son, and hopefully you got from this episode, I really encourage you to be patient with yourself. know that if you don't know, if you're not really feeling that you are feeling inspired, if you're feeling frustrated or feel like you're not really plugged in at this point to what your purpose really is, be okay with that. I say step one is just accept where you're at. And what I would say is be gentle with yourself. Accept that it's okay to be uncomfortable. I said to my son yesterday, we're perfectly imperfect at any stage of life. Remember, this isn't about perfection. It's okay to realize that you have a story and your story doesn't have to always look good. In fact, I think some of the best entrepreneurs and most successful entrepreneurs I've met have had the worst stories. And it's, I think, from those worst stories that they come up with the courage, the idea, and the inspiration to come up with something incredible. And then again, I would really encourage you, even no matter where you're at, to try the Starbucks exercise, to try to really go in to audaciousness. I would challenge you to, even for myself today, probably like just to check in, what's next? Because there's always a what's next. And I think that that's a great way to start. And for any of you out there, as we're doing the show and progressing, feel free to reach out. I love your questions. If you're kind of past that or you're stuck in a certain spot or have another question, reach out to me. It's investingonpurpose@gmail.com. I will address it on the next episode. And again, this is the first of hopefully many solo episodes that I'll do. But I really want to take cues from you, the audience, because I'm really here to serve you as best as I can. And with that, I just really want to wish you guys the best, most inspired path to find your purpose within your life.